Another response is through the private sector, which is the only part of India that really works. The private sector and civil society work. The government generally tends not to work. And the private sector has come up with some spectacular responses. This is a very, very close friend of mine, a spectacular entrepreneur, cardiac surgeon, had his career in London for many years before he decided to go back and become voluntary surgeon to Mother Teresa before she died in the slums of Calcutta. And when she died, decided to open his own heart hospital, pediatric heart hospital in Bangalore, entirely on his own, and set it up. And it's called Narayan Hridyalaya, which is a mouthful for somebody who doesn't speak Indian language, but it basically means God's compassionate home. And this is an incredible, there's a case that a colleague of mine at HBS and I wrote about this. This is an incredible case study. And the more I look at it, the more convinced I am. And this never fails to irritate all my cardiologist friends in New York and Boston. It just irritates the heck out of them. And the reason it irritates them is that I believe that this guy is probably the best, if not one of the, either one of the best, if not the best, pediatric cardiac surgeon in the world today. And he has done this in Bangalore from nothing, from ground up. Every year I go back, he's added another floor. So this is kind of, let me give you a flavor of how he runs, right? By the way, the break-even cost of open heart surgery in his hospital is $2,000, right? The average charge to patients in India is $2,400. Other Indian private hospitals charge $5,500. In this country, you would pay $100,000. Once you include what insurance pays for it, right? So we're talking about a massive discrepancy in costs. And these surgeons do pretty well. They're okay. They live pretty well in India. Dr. Shetty, the fellow who started this, Devi Shetty, has a spanking Mercedes that brings him into his hospital every day. He does fine. But he dedicates himself to running this hospital on more or less a break-even basis. What does that mean? He has a team of 10 surgeons who get compensated reasonably well. Every day, he has a control system that looks at what the cash balances of the hospital are and determines how many people can be treated free and makes that money available for free treatment to anyone who walks in with a heart condition that cannot afford it. Nobody's turned away. Not one person has been turned away in the last 5 years for heart treatment of any sort. And if the cash balances are running low, then he will provide some fee for service. So it's a constant balancing act between paying patients and unpaying patients, right? To try to make sure that people are not turned away, that less critical people might be asked to wait in the hotel that he set up across the street, while more critical patients are. So you can see that there are 2 or 3 levers that he can pull at the same time. At the same time, he's trying to keep enough retained earnings that he can plow back into reinvestment and build a new floor every year. So every year a floor is added. It's up to about 6 or 7 floors. And it's been so successful at providing tertiary heart care, all the way from primary to tertiary heart care, that he's now expanded into something called a health city, where there is an analogous renal unit, an analogous oncology unit, an analogous ophthalmology unit, and an entire complex is building up, right? And my role is to advise in this, help him provide financing for opening up the new hospitals. Just an incredible story. So how does he pull this off? I think the answer is basically in the scale. And in the scale. So the way he would say it, the way Devi Shetty would say it, is the kind of procedure that I would do in London maybe once a week, here I do 10 times a day. That's the scale of heart disease. In other words, I am so practiced at some of this stuff, and I've had to do hands-on innovation to try to adjust to this huge volume of scale, that has now received recognition in global cardiac circles. So the typical reaction of a surgeon visiting his hospital is to say, you can't be serious, right? And they look at it and say, wow, these numbers are great. Then there's disbelief that sets in and says, this just cannot be happening. You can't be doing these cutting-edge surgeries with numbers that are better than most of the hospitals in the US. And then it's to say, can I send my students to you for an internship? And so you walk around the hospital and there are a bunch of people from Europe, a bunch of people from the US doing small stints to just imagine the impossible, in other words. Unbelievable. And the money he's giving away to charity. He's either putting it back in his hospital or giving it away to charity, because at this point he's sufficiently wealthy from his previous life that he doesn't need to worry about it. But this is the kind of entrepreneurship that's going on. So in other words, you have a defunct healthcare system that doesn't work. You have civil society through the Self-Employed Women's Association trying to compensate for it. And you have private entrepreneurs like Devi Shetty coming in to provide tertiary health care.